We have been traveling through England on our way up to Scotland with our American friends who have never been to the UK before now, and it got us thinking about some of the culture shocks that we have experienced, both the first time that we came to the UK, their experience here in the UK, and
some things that are potentially like positive culture shocks and things that might be hard to get used to if we were to stay here long term.
And since we are in a hotel room right now, let's start with the hotel differences, because I think for me there have been some pretty large things that have been kind of an adjustment, something that I didn't even know was not a thing. Excuse our kind of disheveled bed. This is a king size bed. This is a king for us anyways. Bed sizes, booking hotel rooms have been very confusing. I did not realize before we came here that we had different bed sizes. So sometimes when I book a king, it's more like a queen size bed. I think we've finally gotten used to like the translations of like a king here is more like a queen is more like a double for us.
Something like that, and the single and the twin, I don't know. It's still sort of confusing to me.
And that is only confounded by the fact that we stay at a lot of Hiltons because we have built up a lot of points with them, so we redeem a lot of points with Hilton properties here in the UK. And Hilton, they use American sizes even here in the UK. So like this is a king size bed, and for us it is a king size bed, but I think you guys here in the UK call it a super king. I didn't realize that even like the sheets are different. We have a flat sheet in the US, like so you have your fitted sheet that goes on your bed, and then you have your flat sheet, and then you have your comforter or your duvet or your quilt, whatever you call it. We have those 3 layers, and I didn't realize that here in Europe that the flat sheet is just not a thing, just doesn't exist. We just go from like here's the comforter to here's the sheets. I think it was weird because I just thought at first that it was just one place that had it, but
no, it's pretty much just a duvet and a bottom sheet.
The other big adjustment, and this is a tough one because it makes it really hard with like traveling with food. This hotel, probably because it's a Hilton, has a little mini fridge, but this is one of the few hotels we've stayed at that actually has one.
It just seems like it's something that's uncommon here, which when we're traveling around and trying to eat a little better at least by going to the store or something, that makes it a little difficult unless we're in more like an Airbnb or something.
For sure. I think tying into that, and this is something that we haven't truly experienced yet because we haven't had any major heat waves or anything, but in the US, it's pretty uncommon to find a hotel that doesn't have air conditioning, AC, we would call it. I think you guys call it aircon. We have it in most hotels, but we've also stayed in several hotels that just, they don't have it, and probably because they're older and I wouldn't expect them to necessarily upgrade to add AC. That is just something that I think would be very difficult to get used to long term.
That's probably fair, and Airbnbs and stuff that we've been in where it's a house or a flat just mostly don't have it at all.
But that also brings me to another thing. I knew before we came here, especially because we had kind of started getting into like the British culture before we ever came. I had no idea that we had so many different words for things, different spellings for things. I think even like the names and how you pronounce places has been like a complete adjustment of like, okay, what does my brain think that would say versus like, what does my brain now think that would say based on how I've heard other words that are similar looking. The aircon AC thing is like definitely one of those things where like we just keep learning these like little differences in our languages.
And even like learning to pronounce a town correctly, and then I'll say it correctly, but then I read it, like see the letters and read it out loud and go, oh, that's wrong. I just said that wrong.
Yeah.
And like, I know how you say it.
Yeah, like we were just in Yorkshire, and Jeremy Jeremy knows it's Yorkshire, but like reading it, he kept saying Yorkshire.
I know it's Yorkshire. When I just talk about it, I say Yorkshire. Reading the word out loud, for some reason, I was saying Yorkshire. I don't know.
And I think that as we continue on, like we are going to continue to learn all of these like subtle little differences in our words and what we call things. And like even like At home, we would say at a restaurant, like, for here or to go is like the phrase we would say. But here it's like...
Here, in or take away.
Yeah, sit in or take away. And like, it's like kind of fun to see our American friends who've never been here, like, start to learn the language and like ask where toilets are and things like that. Things that, like, words we don't really use. I would put that in the column of things that I enjoy, because I also feel like kind of special when I start using words like, oh, it's posh. It feels very posh to use the word posh as an American. Sometimes you say you're knackered now.
Sure, and you can talk about your favorite Spice Girl and feel confident. She's not your favorite Spice Girl.
Who?
Posh.
Oh no. P.S. Just so you know, under my cool Beetle sweatshirt, I am wearing my Spice Girl shirt because represent. My favorite Spice Girl was Baby. Is Baby. Like, nothing happened to her. She didn't go away. Who's your favorite Spice Girl? Ginger.
She probably was. I don't know who really is, honestly.
Who is your favorite Spice Girl? I want to know. It's important, burning questions that I have. I think another thing that is kind of a shock, yeah, not just the first time that we came, but the times that we've been since, is like, you get in and like, you're so used to look, I mean, I guess now I'm looking right, so that is the right direction. Oh man, am I getting used to it? I feel like like there's the whole thing where we drive on different sides of the road. Yes, that's a thing. It is a shock, especially the first time that I drove here. I'm pretty used to it now, but I think still like the directional thing of like crossing the road as a pedestrian is kind of confusing. And I think the piece that is always like weirdly triggering or like anxiety inducing is when I'm driving on the left side of the road and I'm making a right turn, because I always like look behind me, because I always think that there's gonna be a car in the other lane, because I'm thinking like traffic is going in the right hand lane when it's not. But that one I think is very disorienting at first. Like the first time that we got into London, and I think part of that is like London is just a big city and it feels kind of overwhelming to be there for the first time. And then you're like not sure even which way to look, and sometimes there's one way, and like nicely they've put which way to look on most of the streets, but it is still disorienting. That does bring up a point of like driving. The roads are very narrow here.
Especially on the country roads, or when there's cars parked on the side and it's not very wide, that you get pretty close to the sides of said cars, or a wall that just continually looks like we're 4 inches from it, and it's off-putting. I don't know.
We have much larger roads in America, just like across the board is basically the situation. And I think if you've never been here and you are interested in driving here, I think that there are some incredible places that are just better to see by car. I would definitely encourage you to drive. It can be a little bit terrifying. Just don't rent a car in London like we did. That was a terrible experience.
It's kind of funny that when we've like returned rental cars, that people are shocked how far we've gone. Like, oh, you went 1,000 miles. And it's like, yeah, over the course of a week or something like that. Like, I don't know, just everything is closer here since it's a smaller country, and it just seems like there's a lot of people that don't want to drive to something.
It is. It's just funny that people seem like off-put by like what would be considered small distances for us.
Yeah, you talk to people and they're saying, oh, how long a drive is it? Oh, 2 hours? When we lived in Orlando, you had to drive like 4 hours just to get out of Florida.
One thing that we have noticed while driving is that we have seen some buses and bus stops in very remote places. And I think that that just speaks to the volume of like how amazing the public transportation is throughout the UK versus America. Like I think at a certain point in the US, we were just like, no, we don't do that. We drive everywhere. And I think cities are trying to start having more public transportation because it's better for everyone to have it, but we have a lot of infrastructure problems because we have not grown in the way that you have. Like even like trains. When's the last time you took a train that was in the US? Because it's been like 10 years since I've taken a train, but we've taken like 30 trains here in the UK now.
I've taken one as an adult.
I've only gone Portland to Seattle on Amtrak. That's like the only train of reference in the US I have.
Yeah, that's the only one I have. But yeah, then we've been on, like you said, maybe not 20, but a good solid 10.
Oh, we have done at least 20 trains here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like, when you think of, like,
I
okay,
guess
we
each
switched
direction.
at that train, we did this, we
Yeah,
did that,
fair. Yeah, I guess
like,
so.
we've taken a lot of trains here at this point.
That's true.
It's just interesting. I also think, like, in the US, there's kind of, I would almost say, like, a bad connotation with taking public transportation. Like, something happened in the history of, like, marketing cars or something that we are like, no, we don't take the bus. And I think it's amazing because, like, we've definitely had our growing pains with learning how to use the bus here. Like, not that we've never taken the bus. Like, Jeremy and I have both taken the bus in multiple places that we've lived. It's just, like, I think kind of similar to states even, is like every bus is maybe slightly different, not really sure how it works. And so I think that's kind of the hurdle that we've crossed with buses here. But I mean, I think the fact that you can, like, literally the Isle of Skye, pretty remote parts of the country, and there are bus stops. We've seen buses. Public transportation is just amazing here, and I hope that you guys don't take that for granted, because you shouldn't. I wish we had that in the US. You know what one of my favorite culture shocks is?
What's that?
Old things.
That you're surrounded by things that are much older than at home?
Yeah, it's just incredible. It is very awe-inspiring to be in a place that has so much history, so many churches, like even taking just trains through the countryside, and I'm like, oh, look at that cute church in the village, in that little village. It's wonderful. There's just so much history here, and so much we still have to learn about that history.
Every time you go to a new town, it's just like, how long has this been here? How old is this building? Why is it here? I don't know. There's just a lot, and it's much older than anything at home.
Yeah, and I think, like, we didn't really learn a lot about British history in school. I mean, like, anything, a lot. We didn't learn a lot. We didn't learn anything about British history. And so even learning, like, I remember we took like a culture test before we came here, and it was like, what happened significantly in 1066? And at the time we were like, well, I don't know. And now I'm like, oh, I know what that is now. And we haven't been there, but we've, like, driven through that area. So it's interesting, like, to learn about the history in the place that it happened. Yeah, it's fascinating. Definitely fascinating for us, especially because of like tying in the royal family and everything. Like, we don't have anything like that in the US. So as Americans, like, the royal family is very intriguing, and yeah, just interesting to learn about. Our royal family is America's sweetheart, Julia Roberts. I don't know. Who would be American royalty?
I don't know that we have real royalty.
We have movie stars.
I
That's our
suppose.
royalty.
There's a lot of people that probably don't care who Julia Roberts is at home that you're talking about.
So you mean it's more about, like, people that have passed away, like Elvis? Is Elvis royalty? Elvis is like American royalty.
I guess sort of. That's not exactly.
He's the king! Michael Jackson, the king of pop. See, we got kings too.
I guess.
You know, another thing that I would say is kind of a very different, I don't know if it's a culture shock, but it's definitely something I didn't really know a lot about before we came here. I mean, it's how we're culturally different. I guess Americans are more known for being more forward, and Brits are a little bit more, I guess, reserved, or like they wouldn't necessarily speak their mind. And we actually had somebody, we ran into a person just talking to a lady with our dog, and she had a dog, and she was basically telling us that she loves Americans because, like, if her salad comes out wrong at a restaurant, that she'll send it back, and she learned that because she had an American boyfriend, and that a lot of people here wouldn't do that because they think it's impolite. And I mean, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if your salad is wrong, you gotta send it back. Like, you need to get what you paid for. And so, I don't know. I just think that's an interesting cultural difference, because I appreciate how polite that you are, but sometimes, I mean, sometimes you can be polite and still say, like, my food is wrong. Can you make it better, please? Maybe you're the more polite one of us. Maybe you wouldn't send back food that was wrong. Depends how wrong it is. No, that's true. That's true. Because I wouldn't necessarily say something if it was minor, but...
No, like if I ordered a sandwich or a hamburger or something and there was onions on it that I don't really like, raw onions, like, I just pick them off. But if something's cooked very wrong or missing something and I paid for it, no, I would probably say something.
Yeah, that's true. That same person that we were talking with, she was also saying that a thing that she likes about Americans is that if like if she were to compliment someone, like, oh, I love your shirt, that Americans would say thank you and British people wouldn't. They'd be like, oh, this old thing or whatever. But I feel like sometimes I compliment people that I see, like, I think nail polish, like I love nail polish. And sometimes I see people with cool nail polish and I'm like, ooh, I love your nail polish. And almost every single time that's happened, they've said thank you and they've been very like, oh, cool, I'm trying a new color or something. So I don't know. I haven't really experienced that, but that was something that that same person pointed out, yeah. You know, speaking of things that British people tell us, I feel like a lot of people are like, apologize for the weather. You
grew up in the Pacific Northwest. We both lived there for at least 10 years. Like, it's pretty similar to here, and I feel like we're used to it. It's not the climate that we came from starting these trips, because we were living in like the Florida area, but we're still used to it. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I think we also sometimes get comments on videos when the weather isn't as nice. I mean, we've been pretty lucky with the weather, fortunately, but when we have gotten comments, sometimes people are like, oh, I wish the weather was better. It would make it look more appealing. And it's like, sorry, we're in England or wherever we are, you know. But I don't know, it doesn't bother me. I think maybe because I grew up in a very rainy climate that we've been here at the beginning of good weather this year, and I think just seeing everyone rush out like, oh, it's a nice weekend, let's get out of here. I can definitely relate to that. Although I don't know, I am still a little bit concerned about the air conditioning, the aircon in the summer, so we'll see. Okay. You want to talk about restaurant culture?
It is kind of different.
Definitely different.
Your service staff is kind of an interesting, different thing, and I feel like overall we've experienced pretty good service here, but I know the culture is different because of tipping or the lack thereof here. Yes. I also think, I don't know if it's like the love of capitalism that we have in America or what exactly. I don't know if it's like impolite here to bring the bill, but in the US, like they'll just bring it to you. And I mean, that has its pluses and minuses. Like maybe you'll feel rushed to get out of there if they just bring you the bill. I think one of the things that's weird is like showing up to a restaurant and just being turned away. They're just like, no, sorry. I mean, I feel like that would happen sometimes at home for like maybe a really small place where they are booked up and they're just like, we're not gonna have room for you. But like you said, most of the time they're gonna sit you at the bar or put you on a list or they'll do whatever they can to get you through that restaurant there. And like just yesterday we were trying to find food with our friends and we went to 4 different places and they were just like, nope, sorry, we don't have anything. And we could see empty tables. I'm sure it has to do with like wait staff and shortages and everything. Like it's just something that as Americans, like it's like confusing. It's like, but why? There's a table right there. It's just like one of those differences that I think is kind of a hard adjustment, that we've gotten so used to like high customer service because they're trying to get those tips. Like they're counting on that tip and they need that tip because it's not built into the wage. And so yeah, it's just very different. You know, the other thing that was really different and so confusing is that there's like a law here about the grocery store being open on Sunday and how long it can be open. That can really affect you when you're trying to shop, especially if you're doing it on the weekend. Like you only have limited time to do that. I just think it's that, like that American mindset of like, there's always something, unless you're in a very small town, there is always something that's open. Like you can always find something somewhere that's open. You can always find food. You can always, you know, get groceries somewhere. And that just doesn't happen here. You have to do a little bit more planning. And I think as Americans, like we can do that. It's just like, we're so ingrained to having access to anything that we want at any given time that it's like, wait, what do you mean I can't shop at 5 p.m. on a Sunday? What do you mean the store is closing at 4? It's just different. It's different. It's not used to that at all. But you know what is nice? Not having to calculate tax. That is nice. I mean, we've lived near places that don't have sales tax, so we can be used to that depending where we're at, but yeah, it's a nice thing to not have to deal with. I mean, for example, like you go to a restaurant in the US and you're like, oh wow,
$10, what a good deal. Well, you have to still pay the 8.5% tax or whatever it is, depending on where you are. And then you also have to calculate in, you know, your 20% tip, and that meal becomes more expensive pretty quickly. So it is nice here that the price that you see is the price that you pay. And if you want to give a tip, you can, but it's not, I mean, I think 10% is standard. Sometimes they'll charge a service charge, but yeah, it's just nice. The tax thing is nice. It's nice to, like, no matter where you go, to not have to calculate tax. Although we do have to calculate that into dollars, so there's still a conversion happening behind the scenes, but hey, there's not two conversions, so that's good. I don't know about you, but I feel like I could go on with these, like, subtle differences for hours.
I mean, there's a lot of little things.
But I would say that those are, as American tourists, what has been our experience as some of the cultural differences and cultural shocks that we have had. Like we've probably said before, we love the UK, we love England. I mean, hey, we keep coming back, it can't be that bad.
That's a weird way to put it.
I know, I'm just teasing. But we love the UK. We love coming here. I love learning about some of the cultural differences that we have. I think there are some things that have been harder adjustments to get used to, but I think overall we really enjoy it here. I think in the back of our head as we travel, we constantly think like, could this be a place that we could live? Could I see myself being here long term? And I think overall, yeah, I mean, I don't think the differences that we have are that different, and like I said before, like, it's fun to learn about our differences. Okay, I bet the internet's dying to know. Carly, what are your cultural shocks about visiting the UK? Carly would probably say that how dog-friendly everything is definitely a good cultural shock for her. She's shocked that she can go in all the pubs.
Or at least most of them.
Yeah, I think maybe New Orleans has some dog-friendly bars, but she's not really been able to go in very many food establishments in the US, like hardly at all. So the fact that we've been to quite a few here, she enjoys. I know she likes it. She also loves footpaths. She loves all the smells of nature she can get out and enjoy. I would say she likes taking the train, but I don't think she loves that part. I am curious if you are American, if you've been to the UK, if you've experienced any of these, or if you have experienced something that we didn't mention. If you are not American, but you have been to America, I'm also curious if you have any cultural shocks about visiting America. You should leave us a comment and let us know. I'm curious to hear from you about that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to our patrons for supporting our channel. If you have not seen the video where we talk about the things that we love about the UK, shortly after we got back from the very first trip, that video is right here. And we will see you very soon.